I want to turn and talk about, I want to hit a few more things about the election in a moment, but I want to turn and talk about the deep state cracking. And I want to hit on a couple stories. Going back, we were just talking about with Victor Davis Hanson. The people inside, he mentioned the whole slew of them in our interview. The people inside the FBI and the Department of Justice and the CIA and the National Security Council, these people all involved in varieties of ways to try to bring down the president, try to bring down the candidate as candidate Trump, try to bring him down after he won the presidency, try to bring him down through the Russia collusion hoax, try to bring him down through this impeachment that we just are finally through. And in fact, there's already talk, if you didn't know this, on the House side, the Democrats are already talking about new articles of impeachment. But leaving that aside, all of that was an effort by people who have long-term investment in Washington staying as it is. Long-term investment in the ruling elite class in Washington. They pull the strings. They decide policy. They say who's in charge. They decide what our policy is going to be about the Ukraine. They decide what our policy is going to be about anything. And the idea that an outsider, Donald Trump, not a loyalist to really the Republican establishment or the Democrat establishment, not a loyalist to them, not a guy who's willing to just toe the party line, not a guy who's going to follow the rules that the lobbyists have set down or the big donors have set down, a guy who's beholden to no one, a guy who came along and said, I'm going to right this ship in America. That is the people, all of those people orchestrating that, whether they were part of the coup attempt, whether they were part of the Russia-Trump collusion, whether they were part of the impeachment, all of those people, broadly speaking, you can describe as the deep state. And that term, people mock it, especially leftists mock it and say, oh, EBGB, the deep state, where do they have their meetings? In some super secret cave somewhere? They mock it. But the deep state is a mentality. It's not a membership club with a list of members and regular monthly meetings. It is a mindset. It is a mindset broadly spread through Washington and not just on the Democrat side of the aisle, both sides of the aisle, especially long-term entrenched people at the higher echelons of bureaucracy in the Department of State and within the White House, within the Department of Justice, within the FBI. High-level people, been there a long time, they know the game, they believe they're in charge, and they found the idea that some upstart billionaire from New York was going to run for run for president, and was going to actually challenge their encrusted elite power, enrage them. And so this deep state mindset is, number one, we're going to take Trump out in the campaign, he's going to lose, and if we don't succeed in that, we're going to take him out once he's won. So this deep state mindset also believed, especially prior to Trump's victory, they believed that everything they cooked up against him, everything they cooked up, the whole Russia-Trump collusion, the Steele dossier, which was just a fabrication of Christopher Steele and others trying to make President Trump look like a bad actor, trying to make him seem as though he could possibly be under the influence of the Russian government. All of that conduct, the actors involved and the actors involved who protected it, who hid it, who forwarded that effort, all those people thought there would never be justice. All that they were doing would never see the light of day. There would never be justice. There would never be a time when they were being called to explain their actions. They thought Hillary Clinton would win and everything swept under the rug. So this deep state cracking and just because, to be clear, just because President Trump won does not mean that all these deep state actors are now saying, okay, now that he won, we surrender. Now we're going to go ahead and comply. We're going to be part of the Trump administration and we're going to embrace the new agenda of the Trump team. They stayed in place. They stayed in their positions like the Vindman twins we were talking about yesterday and also Dr. Hansen mentioned. Many players in Washington stayed in the positions they had because they then saw their job to be fighting, opposing, tripping up President Trump's agenda, not letting him move forward with the agenda the American people voted for. So, to start with, but the reason we're getting around to all this about the deep state cracking is A few things have happened recently that make people a little bit hopeful, a little bit, maybe there's some, actual cracking of this deep state, this hard shell, encrusted, conspiratorial, slithering snakes inside Washington who all back each other up and cover for each other. Maybe there's going to be some exposure of those people. Maybe that hard shell deep state is going to crack. First thing was, now we don't know yet the name, but I mentioned yesterday, I want to repeat again today to be clear, that the person who wrote first took out the big piece in the New York Times and then wrote the book about it also, naming himself or herself anonymous, basically saying, who said, I am inside the Trump White House. I am working every day to undermine his presidency. We are going to stall his agenda. I am fighting him at every step of the way. And there are many of us here. It was a person saying, we're fighting Trump and you, America, can't do a darn thing about it. In fact, they thought they'd be cheered on. So news out of Washington was, at least Joe DeGenova says, and he's a very high-powered lawyer with contacts very high in the White House, probably with President Trump, but very high in the White House, says that the White House has finally succeeded in identifying who Anonymous is and that they are going to remove him. I'm assuming I think he said him. Remove him. And this is something you have to understand. When he put this out there, Anonymous wrote this idea was no one's going to know. Not only am I going to put this out there under anonymous terms, but the New York Times isn't going to tell. I'm going to publish this book that he put out, and the publisher of the book wasn't going to reveal his identity. No one in the whole cover-up deep state Washington is ever going to expose my identity. But, if President Trump is nothing else, he is tenacious. He is determined. He's not going to let this go. So they believe they've uncovered his identity. Please, I hope they ultimately not only relieve him of his job, but tell America who it is. Okay, second point on this deep state cracking kind of thing I want to mention today, and that has to do with Jessie Liu. And I meant to get a picture of her, and I didn't get one before I got here. But anyway, Jessie Liu is a Washington lawyer, a Washington government lawyer. And what's happened in the last few days is a testament not just to the fact that the deep state might be cracking, that people are starting to figure out who inside, who seems to be a loyal government employee, a loyal government lawyer, who inside is actually a problem, actually a deep state operator, actually working against the interests of President Trump, who was duly elected. Jessie Liu was going to be, in fact, she was supposed to be I got to get the date of it. She was supposed to be tomorrow, actually. She'd been nominated by President Trump, and she's supposed to have her hearing tomorrow in front of the Senate Banking Committee to be appointed as a deputy treasurer for the a deputy assistant in the Treasury Department. And so it was a position requiring Senate approval. So she was up for the nomination. Hearing was supposed to be tomorrow, and President Trump pulled her nomination. And she is the one backing up from this. I'm getting at the point that she is one who is viewed to be, or now suspicions are arising, that she is one of these deep state operators, that she really, much as she stayed on and agreed to continue to be an attorney in the federal government after President Trump won the election, but she really may have been acting more on behalf of the Democrats or on behalf of the anti-Trump crowd. She was the Washington, D.C. U.S. attorney, and she was the one who intervened on behalf of and protected a gentleman named James Wolfe. And if you remember the name James Wolfe, he was the lawyer for the Senate Intelligence Committee. And he was the one who was exposed as having leaked top secret information to the New York Times, to a reporter with whom he was having an amorous relationship. And the information he leaked had to do with the FISA court application for which one was Carter Page, I think it was, for Carter Page. Point is, this guy is getting information in the Senate due to his role as an insider in the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he's got the information and leaking it to the New York Times to his lover, and he did other leaks also. So numerous leaks of confidential information, and when he was arrested, he was prosecuted. But Jessie Liu, in her capacity at that time as U.S. Attorney in Washington, pushed to have him, or she bowed to the request of Senate Democrats to give him a very, very, very light sentence, to only prosecute a little bit. So he, James Wolfe, I think served 60 days or something like that, was facing, she's the one that okayed a 60-day sentence for James Wolfe because, or people are now suspecting, because she was sympathetic to what he was doing. He was leaking things to hurt President Trump, to help the Democrats take down President Trump. And he was, as I say, a lawyer for the Senate Intelligence Committee. So this became one reason people were suspicious about this Jessie Liu. And the other aspect of this I want to mention is this is not a story that you would find covered in the Washington Post or the New York Times or any of the other, I will call them the Democrat media mob elite, but the Democrat media, the Democrat leftist media, friendly only to the Democrats, friendly to the leftists, never friendly to President Trump, always trying to hurt him. You wouldn't have found this story, this link, and these suspicions arising about her in mainstream media. It came to President Trump's attention, it appears, because there first was an article on a website called the Conservative Treehouse. And I'm telling you, if you are really into heavy-duty research and diving in to read things, the Conservative Treehouse is a place that they're certainly not mainstream media. They have one writer who goes by the name Sundance and who is constantly digging in, pulling out documents, understanding the roots of things, connecting dots, laying out timelines. And he's the one, he raised suspicions about Jessie Liu as she was about to be facing her confirmation hearing tomorrow. Now she won't have it because what was her role? His first question, what was her role? Why was she so willing to go really extremely light? I mean, to not press for serious charges and serious prison time for a lawyer for the Senate Intelligence Committee who leaked numerous top secret documents. What is the reason? If you're forget loyal to Trump, loyal to the country, loyal to your job as U.S. Attorney, you're not supposed to be making sympathetic decisions sympathetic to your political aspirations or your political viewpoints. There was no reason to go light on him. There weren't extenuating circumstances that would say, well, okay, but he's not such a bad guy. He did a lot of bad stuff, and she pretty much let it go. So you have Jessie Liu pulled back, and this was also a real commentary, I think, on the need for the kind of media that Conservative Treehouse. So Conservative Treehouse ran their story, and then Lou Dobbs on Fox also planted that story, also got that out there. What in the world are we doing, elevating Jessie Liu, given her sympathy to this Democrat leaker? So he did that. And then Congressman Devin Nunes commented also on Lou Dobbs' show, just, very happily agreeing that was a great thing, that there was a decision to pull back on, to not just let these deep state operators get moved up into positions of power. There also was a question about whether whoever it is on President Trump's team who is vetting all of these people before he nominates them, because obviously President Trump cannot sit there and read the lengthy resume of every single person in all the positions where he has to nominate people. He has to have a team he trusts. And so maybe the team he trusts, the one who told him go ahead and nominate Jessie Liu, is just made of people who didn't actually, they had no nefarious wrongdoing purpose. They just didn't dig deep enough. He looked good on paper, been in Washington a long time, held a bunch of positions. Or maybe some people are saying, he ought to ask him, why is it you'd be recommending someone to put her in a highly sensitive position if this person actually was one who seemed to have acted in a sympathetic way? Last example of this kind of cracking of the deep state has to do with the sentencing of Roger Stone. And let me back up and remind you, we were talking with Dr. Hansen in the last segment, Victor Davis Hansen pointing out, it wasn't like there was a Trump-Russia collusion that actually happened. There was nothing there. Nothing happened. The entire Mueller investigation was based on lies and just a conspiracy theory concocted against the president as part of the effort of people in power to remove him from office. So the entire Russia collusion thing that Mueller investigated, that we spent millions of dollars on, and just endless headlines for the first 3 years of President Trump's presidency, involved an effort to take down the president based on a lie. And along the way, Robert Mueller dug up dirt on a bunch of other people, including Roger Stone. I mean, the idea that you would, and Roger Stone seems to have also been part of the effort of the Mueller team to arm twist people connected to President Trump, hopefully to get President Trump somehow, because these people arm twisted would give up President Trump and either confess a true story or make up an accusation, whatever it is they wanted. The Mueller team was vicious in going after people who had any affiliation with Trump. So here's Roger Stone. You know, he's been convicted and they're looking at sentencing him. And these DOJ lawyers, Department of Justice lawyers, came up with a recommendation of 7 to 9 years in prison, which was, even by the vicious standards of the Mueller team, outlandishly outrageous. Outlandishly outrageous. So President Trump tweeted out, hey, you know, this seems a little extreme, a little harsh, not sure this is right. And what has happened, and no one knows all the details yet of what happened inside the Department of Justice, but 4 lawyers of the Department of Justice have quit. The lawyers involved in making this outlandish, vicious, retaliatory, unjustified recommendation of 7 to 9 years for Roger Stone. So those 4 lawyers have quit. Again, unclear if those 4 lawyers quit is going to be because maybe they're going to help expose what's been happening inside the Department of Justice. Maybe they were called on the carpet. And, you know, y'all were at the top of it all is Attorney General Barr. You know, was he finally tuned into this and saying, are you kidding me? 7 to 9 years? I have no reason to think, by the way, Attorney General Barr was aware of these 2 lawyers or was involved in the discussions about the sentencing recommendation. But these are just little pieces of fact, little stories, little pieces that add up to the idea that the relentlessness, the determination of the Trump administration and the people who are helping the Trump administration, short list of people, but you have Congressman Nunes, Congressman Jordan, Mark Meadows, Matt Gaetz, Congressman Louis Gohmert, people on the U.S. House side who are Republicans who are going to persist in demanding that the truth come out. Same thing on the Senate side. Very short list of people on the Senate side willing, but some, Lindsey Graham apparently, willing to say we're going to have hearings, we're going to get to the truth. But I want to wrap up this little segment and really end the show for today by saying these are vital things that are happening. To have people on the side of, it's not on the side of Trump versus Democrats or Republican versus Democrats. It's on the side of the American people deserve to have the justice system mete out justice. They deserve to have investigators get to the bottom of what happened inside the DOJ and the FBI and expose the wrongdoers, the whole long laundry list of them, which may include some people who are representing their states in the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate. There are people who are on the short list of suspicious on some people's lists. Whatever it is, the highest goal is to get at the truth, bring it out, including having people who've committed acts that are illegal, to have those people prosecuted, brought to the justice system, indicted, prosecuted, and marched off to prison if they really did what it seems like they did. Because if we don't do that, if we don't demand justice, we really will have surrendered our justice system to the latest conspiracy plot by people who are still sitting, just like Nunes was trying to explain to us on national television. These people, Devin Nunes said, you know, if we don't get to the bottom of this, we'll have this mindset going forward. We'll have people thinking you can do this again. And you had Adam Schiff still lying to the American public and to the U.S. Senate in still throwing out Russia-Trump collusion when there was nothing to it. To wrap up, to say the deep state needs to crack. We need to have more people coming forward. We need to have more willingness of the Trump administration and people who are loyal to the Trump administration in the House and the Senate going after the truth, bringing the wrongdoers to justice, or we simply will not have the justice system we, the American people, deserve.